and you have to choose the right people. It's sneaky too, because I've also been in the wrong groups that's with quote unquote very successful people, and their mindset was way off. They weren't doing things the way I want to do it, and it made me feel bad about myself, and then it affected my success. But the right people can help you, support you, give you the right answers, think the right way, and also you should be with people that are below you at the same level and above you. You've got to find those groups. If you're going to be successful, it takes active work.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Jason Swenk here with another episode of the Smart Agency Masterclass. And these guys are so distracting, but I have two of my good friends on the show, Mr. Darby and Mr. Sasquatch. He'll be joining us in just a second. I'm not sure what we're going to talk about. Yeah, we're going to talk about Bigfoot sightings in Silverton, Colorado, and how that could have been me or that might not have been me. I saw a cool video from, what's his name? I can't remember his name. Who did Oprah discover? Tyler Perry. Tyler Perry was talking about the types of people you surround yourself with. And I thought this was pretty relevant to building your business, building your agency. Because I find a lot of agency owners, and I think you guys do too, they're so stressed out in their agency. They come to us and they're like, I want to sell. I don't want to do this anymore. They're unhappy. And I feel that it's because they have the wrong people around them. And the video talked about there are 3 different types of people you have surrounding yourself. I thought about this in the business. You have the people that are leaves. The leaves are only here for a season. And sometimes you need those people, right? And then you have branches. And those are the people that you can put a little pressure on, but the further you walk out the branch, then it can crack. So you can't put all that weight on it. And then there's roots. Those are the people that ground you. Those are the people that, like you two monkeys, that humble you and never let your head get too big. Like they ground you in the ground. They keep you solid. So, I just thought that was a cool video. What are you guys seeing?
I think you're absolutely right, though. The reason we do anything is because of the people we're surrounded with. Like that's why there's, thin zones, blue zones, fat zones.
What zones? I've never heard of these zones.
There's blue zones. Yeah, blue zones are lived over 100.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And there's like if you look, in the Midwest, people are really obese, and it's not because it's the Midwest, it's because of the social atmosphere. And I'm from there. That's why I'm fat.
You just love cooking food, which everyone, you should know that Ian loves or makes the best coleslaw in the world.
Oh, geez. I make good coleslaw. But this is so important. I think that's why selecting out masterminds, and I don't want to just promote talk about you join the mastermind. I'm saying you should be surrounding yourself with these people, because if you're not, you're all alone. Like I'm lucky enough to talk to a bunch of people, and I call them all the time. I hate talking on the phone, but I call them because it's support, and you have to choose the right people. And it's sneaky too, because I've also been in the wrong groups that's with very quote unquote, very successful people, and their mindset was way off, and and they weren't doing things the way I want to do them. And it made me feel bad about myself, and then it affected my success, and it makes me put down. But the right people can help you, support you, give you the right answers, think the right way, and also, you should be with people that are below you at the same level and above you, and you've got to find those groups. If you're going to be successful, it takes active work.
Let's unpack that a little bit. What about being in the wrong group made you feel bad about yourself?
Well, there's people that all they talk about how successful they are. And they're like, oh, I did all this and I made all this money. I'm not going to call out who this person is, but there's a person who was just indicted or just fined by the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, for bad business practices. I mean, at the time I didn't know it, but there's a lot of those people in a lot of these groups that will show their, Comma Club awards, and they don't tell you what they did to get them. And they're like, oh, it's simple. I just did this, this, this. And they don't tell you all the unsavory things that they did. And you feel bad. You're like, why isn't this working for me? I'm smart. I work hard. I'm a good copywriter. I'm doing all this stuff. And they don't talk about their downs. They're just like, I'm genius. I make tons of money.
Darby, you chat with so many agency owners. What are you finding that is like on their psyche? Like when you do a game plan with them, you do a blueprint with them. What's the thing holding them back?
Man, that is a really tough one, but I would probably say overthinking. I think overthinking is the biggest hurdle because it's tough to make decisions. And that's the curse of being an intelligent person and having good perspective is you see multiple angles and multiple options, and it can be debilitating when it comes to making the right decision. So people have a tendency to worry too much about if they're making the right move as opposed to making a move. And I think that's sometimes or oftentimes is what's slowing people down. And that's, again, that leans right into the whole support system thing, right? Having people around you that are on the same wavelength as you, that you respect, that can share with you and tell you, you know, what they've done or how they did it, or support you in the decision or support you in making a decision. Because it's really difficult. It's really tough sometimes.
It is. It is. And I think, I mean, I was just going through this, you know, like the overthinking thing, right? Launching, I was doing this video, and that's, I mean, why I coach so many people on with video, because they overthink their videos, and it's like, they're like, that's why they want me there. But I was doing my video and I'm like, man, I wish I had someone just coaching me. So I sent it out to other people. They're like, oh, this is what you're thinking about. And I'm like, am I on the right track? They're like, no, this is good. Because you're like, you get so deep into it and you're like, man, this isn't going to work. And then, you know, with marketing and sales, you're only going to be right 20, 30% of the time. And that's where we all like, you know, I hear that from agency owners. Like, we were on a call yesterday and the person's like, this isn't going to work. I tried this. I'm like, you tried it once. Right. You know, I mean, Thomas Edison had to try 2,000 light bulbs before it worked. Think about that. Like, people died to get light bulb filaments, but he had a whole group of people, to your point. I mean, and there's a great book out there about Thomas Edison and his friendship with Henry Ford and a few other people. And they had this group of like these ultra successful people that they hung out with. And they weren't like, it's not like you think of like, oh, they're having these huge parties. No, they'd just be walking through the woods and talking with each other, kind of like the agency experience.
I always love that quote of like, you know, Edison discovered 1,999 ways of how not to make a light bulb. When you're saying that, I was kind of thinking back and going, I'm actually more fearful of not making a mistake and not getting there. Like you guys know this about me. It's like, oh, I have an idea. Like, even Darby told me the experience. He's like, there's a new rule. I don't know. You unfortunately weren't there this year, but we asked everyone saying, hey, what are 2 things that you need to stop doing in the new year? And one was like, you need to implement a 24-hour thinking rule rather than just go execute it. It's like, I have an idea. I'm like, boom. Like, just go do it. Like, I don't care if it fails. I mean, I want it to succeed, but I'm more fearful of not even trying about doing it. Or I think back at going, you know, when people say people with ADHD have a hard time multitasking, I'm like, that's you're not going to get me off, because we can multitask better than everybody because we're multitasking 1,000 different things. We just can't like our output for that, you know, saying, now I'm all fucked up.
I gotcha. No, but I mean, you're right. That's where you need people around you and the right people. And I think, yeah, you know, I did this for a long time, you know, for like first 4 or 5 years of having the agency, I thought I was going to do it all on my own. And I'm like, I felt bad not doing it all on my own. Then I actually reached out to Derek Sievers from CD Baby. And like, what's really cool is like, especially back then, it was a lot easier to reach out to some of these people And he's like, yeah, you need to find a coach, and here's who I did, and blah, blah, blah. And I started getting that and transformed not only the business, but my psyche. Right. And I think it's so important to search out those groups, and so important to be a part of them. And I mean, it's a social group, and you should you've got to make sure that you're giving as much as you're receiving. Also, learning to receive feedback properly is something else you've got to learn to do. And in those groups, it's like when you get up and someone gives you feedback, you accept it. You don't tell them why it's not going to work.
The assholes, where you ask for advice and then you fight them on it.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, well, this is why it's going to work. I mean, I think the perfect example, and every person that's in one of these groups is going to be like, you're talking about me, but it's so common as the foot in the door thing is, developing a good foot in the door. And they're like, it doesn't work. I can't do it. I don't have one. I'm like, you're just not doing it. I see them all the time. And they're like, oh, this doesn't work. And then they show it to me. I'm like, that's not a foot in the door. That's you charging someone for a proposal. 99 times out of 10, that's what that is. Or they're trying to do an entire project. But the point being is you've got to listen to people and step back and really listen and be a part of those groups and learn. And if you can't do that, it's just a skill you've got to learn.
I think people are defensive by nature, right?
No, they aren't.
I was going to do the same thing.
It's hard. It's hard when somebody tells you, a perspective or something that differs from the way you've been viewing something, and to really have the ability to take that step back and look at it in a different light and be accepting of that is a difficult thing to master. But I think being in an environment where you're forced to do it more frequently, as with anything else, that's where you're able to get the ability to do that. And that's where you are really able to grow.
And anyone that's tells you that they've done it all on their own without being a part of a group or having a support system is lying.
Those are the same people that tell you how much money they have.
Yeah. They're like, this whole idea that I just did it all on my own. Like no one does it all on their own. I know some of the most successful people out there, and none of them actually did it on their own. And a lot of them too, the person you see is actually a person that did the least amount.
I heard, I think it was Bill Burr, the comedian. He was talking to someone. He was like, I don't like Steve Jobs. I don't think he did much for anybody. And people are like, what? He invented the iPhone. He's like, did he? He's like, all these smart people he got around him invented the iPhone. All these nerds that are never, like the Johnny Ive, he designed it, right? And so he wrote off those coattails. But
he made the group around him. Walt Disney said the same thing. He said, someone asked him, what do you do? He's like, do you draw? He's like, I don't draw. I don't make the music. I don't write the stories. I find the right people. And then I'm like a bee, pollinating the ideas.
Well, and they're the visionary, right? Like every company needs a visionary with 1,000 freaking ideas. And then you need the people for, like in a car, the throttle body. It's like, I'm only going to let this much gas in and this much air in, because if it's open the whole time, you're just going to burn out.
But but coming back to the idea of groups, I mean, you can talk about vision. That's a whole nother thing, but you've got to, and I find, sometimes the groups too, it might not be the right group. You might not be the right one for that group, but you got to give them, you got to try them out.
How do you know when the group is wrong for you?
It's a great question. And part of it is you get in there and you're like, if you don't feel challenged, like this is a hard thing. Like Darby was saying, if everyone's going, oh, you're great, that's not the right group for you.
If you're the smartest guy in the room, you're hanging with the wrong people.
Yeah. That's important. Do you like being around them? Right. Do you feel good about what they're doing? Do you feel good about what they're saying? And are they going the same direction that you want to? And are there people that have been there? Because this was another thing. It's like, I was thinking about I went to scale and sell my company. And then I started looking, I was in one group and I'm like, wait, none of these people have ever done that. So why should I be in this group? And so that's part of it. Are they going where you want to go? Are they doing things that you want to do? And, do you vibe with them? Right. Because there's entrepreneurs that are that's what I liked about the agency group. And I like groups of people that are not 100% money motivated. And I've been in those groups where they're just like, I need to make as much money as possible. And that it's never enough. And that's fine. if that's who you are, go be with those people. But it's you've got to know who you are too. And then also it's a timing thing, right? If you're trying to build a SaaS company, you shouldn't be in an agency group. If you're trying to build an agency, you shouldn't be in a general marketing group.
I think they can give you, like, what I found with joining a bunch of different groups is you'll get some ideas in the very beginning, and then you quickly you're like, this is not the group for me. But it's kind of, I look at it as, a Vegas buffet. You got to kind of try it out and see what works. And like, I finally.
Do you have to try out a Vegas buffet?
Do what?
Do you really? You don't really need to try out a Vegas buffet.
I do. I love Vegas buffet. Those crab legs and oh my gosh!
Oh man, that just sounds like food poisoning.
Oh no! I love my Vegas buffet.
But yeah, you're right though. Try them out, and that's the other thing too. I think that a lot of people don't realize is like they don't want to spend money to be in these groups. But I'm like, there's a reason country clubs are expensive, is because elite people want to be around elite people, and they want some sort of gatekeeper to it. And I think that's an important thing to understand too, is you're going to have to spend some in some way, shape or form, pay to be around these people if you really want to accelerate.
I recently joined a group and I've been kind of unsatisfied with it. When I originally joined, they were like, hey, it's a certain revenue and above. And it was a pretty high number. I was like, cool. And I quickly got in and I realized I was hosed, because I was like, I'm the biggest one in this group. Like, these people are all starting out, and I was pretty upset. And then I also realized, it was just like people in different life cycles of where I'm currently at, right? Like, it goes back to what you were saying of going, if someone's so focused in money, yeah, go for it. Right? Like, money's great, but I can tell you, once you have enough, it doesn't. Someone said this to me, or I heard this from someone else. It said, you can lose all your money and you've lost nothing. You can lose your health and you've lost something. You can lose your character and you lost everything. And I was like, that's pretty cool. Like, then I started kind of comparing, like, who do I want to surround myself with? And it really kind of, once I heard that, it kind of changed my thinking a little bit of going, hey, if my son was standing behind me, would I still make the same decision? And I can guarantee you, there's a lot of people out there doing some unethical or kind of on the fence stuff. And you're like, if your kids or your parents were standing behind you, would you still do that? And a lot of the people I see, especially these ads, I'm like, oh man, come on, Mike, you can do way better. And I even, like, a couple weeks ago, here's an example where I kind of broke my character a little bit. So I'll pick on myself. We hired someone to help us with marketing, not Alex. And they were like, oh, you got to kind of go after some of these ads that drive you crazy. And so I started doing like response ads. I'm like, God, these guys are idiots. And like, that's so out of my character. Like, I may tell you goofballs behind it. I'm like, what are these people thinking? Like, who actually believes this crap? And so I did a bunch of these and I was like, man. And then, like, I watched them back. I'm like, I don't know. I was like, and then I told the team, I'm like, all right, no more of this. But if we find a good video, I'll do a reaction to a good video and be like, yeah, this is spot on. So I think, it's, you got to kind of measure yourself. That's what I kind of try to do. Cause I can tell you, I make so many mistakes.
But you've got to have it comes back to, once you have the right people around you, and there's some people, I think you can be in the groups, but then you also find the right people around you that'll call you out in your BS too. Right. And say, you know what, just don't do that. And, and when you find them, you got to nurture those relationships.
Or certain people that push you to do a video that backfired on me. You remember that?
Which video?
We can call
the punch video
individual. No, well, but Ian encouraged me to do a video. He's like, "Oh, you should rename your videos to do all these things." And I was like, "Okay, I'll do it." And then
I don't remember this.
oh, I'm not gonna. I don't want to give highlights to the certain person. So,
Oh,
but yes,
oh, yeah, no, yeah, that was
pretty fun.
it
It
worked.
worked.
But again, it goes back to like what you were saying, Jason, is, what's in your character? What's in your, is that something you'd be proud of? Right. If you look back that, am I the type of person that thrives on conflict and negativity? Absolutely not. So why would I put something out to the universe that would portray me in that light? Because that's not who I am at my core. I'm a happy person. I'm a positive person. I avoid those things at all costs. And so just like, yeah, like, you have to hold yourself to a certain standard. And if it's not within in that range, then you don't do it.
Yeah. And I think as you hold yourself to a standard, then you'll be able to find your pack that you need to run with. But it's hard to find, those types of people. And I think your pack changes over time. Ian's a lot older than all of us here. He's about to almost be almost the 5-0. But I think over time you change too. Like when I look at my 20s, man, I didn't know jack shit. Even though I had a pretty successful agency in my 20s, and then we were able to sell in our 30s, and I still really didn't understand, like, well, who was my pack? Like, because I didn't know really kind of what my standards were. I really didn't kind of figure that out until probably, I don't know, maybe early 40s. I mean, you guys see that as well?
Yeah, I mean, it changes, like you said, right? You evolve and you go through stages, and your business goes through stages, right? And maybe you hit that stage where, like, if you just want a lifestyle business, you hang out with people that are doing lifestyle business. Because if you're going to hang out with people that want to scale their business and are intense and want to grow, nothing but billion-dollar unicorns, you're going to feel bad about yourself, or you're going to be, thrown off. I mean, it's okay to have them as friends. I think I'm not saying don't have them as friends, but if you're going to talk business with them, I think that's important, and it changes. Like you said, it evolves. I know, like, I wanted to have like a $500 million business when we first started this.
Why?
And
Why did you think you wanted that?
Just, it was a number. And I mean, I know people that started.
So where'd you get that number? Like, where did that number float into your head?
Well, I'll be honest with you, it was a $5 billion business, because I had friends that had $1 billion businesses.
Oh yeah, you did know some of the people on the teams of Facebook. So
yeah, well, I mean, yeah, Facebook. I mean, a few other people had 9-figure exits, and I'm like, but it was a different business, and I was all over the place trying to do it. But eventually, I'm like, I don't need that. I don't want that, right? And then I had friends that had e-com businesses. And that's another thing with, like, it's e-com business, a completely different business than an agency business. And the numbers, you can have $100 million e-com business and have no money. It's easy to have a $20 million e-com business that's losing money on a weekly basis. And so, like, understanding that stuff is so important, because you need to be around those people, but you also have to really be able to have insights into it. And I think it's something you just learn, because it does evolve over time. And now I'm like, you know what? I know what I want to do, and I know who I want to be around, and I know who I want to support. And I think one of my favorite quotes is, I don't know if it's a quote or ideas from Dan Sullivan. He talks about who do you want to be a hero to? And like that, I think more so, because we talk about avatars and everything. It's like, well, who do you want to be a hero to? And what does that take? I think if we can transform that, and then you find out, well, let me be around people that want to be heroes like this.
Well, what changed? Because I kind of, when I was building, solar, I It was right around, like, when we started, it was 99. So it was when the .com era was just booming. And you old people realize that. You remember that. But like, and we saw all these huge exits. So I was kind of the same way like you. I was like, and then I remember when I sold the agency and I wanted to do the next thing because Instagram just sold for $1 billion or something like that. I'm like, crap, if this little picture app could sell for $1 billion, like, I can do an app and I want to go after the billion thing. And so I started chasing that. So like, and I can't remember what stopped me. Like, and I literally, the app was called Goalvader. It took pictures of everything that you ate and gave you a visualization of your feelings relating to all the crap that you just ate. And I remember I was like, I hate doing this. And I was like, I don't care about hitting that milestone of the B anymore. So, and what changed for you from going like to almost kind of ground you a little bit more of going, it's not about the money, it's about what I can create and that kind of stuff.
I mean, I just had a lot of deep thinking. It wasn't like overnight, right? It wasn't going to happen like that. I know that. And
deep thinkings over gummies.
Yeah, deep thinking. No gummies. Just like, I mean, there's like, why am I unhappy? Like what, like thinking about like what's, because there's times when you're happy and you're excited, and if you're excited about it, that's great. But what, I was leaving some of these various things, and I was like, I was doing stuff. I'm like, I'm just miserable, right? And constantly chasing this and chasing that, and the people I was working with, and I was just not happy. And so I'm like, well, what do I really want? And I think, and there's I talked about it too. It's like, it's not just like satisfaction in the moment and like, oh, I'm making all this money. It's like, for me, I realized I need to be building something and also really helping people that appreciate the help. Because you can, I mean, like, there's big agencies out there. I talk to a lot of them and I work with them, and they work with big companies, right? Those big companies, they have $1 million a year contracts. Those big companies might say thank you, might be really helpful, but you're not making it, you're not generally impacting someone's life a whole lot.
Yeah.
And which is fine. But for me, that was not what I wanted.
You know what helped me when we're building, and it continues to help me. Like, even if I lost, like, I kept thinking, and maybe this will help everyone. If I lost everything today in money, assets, all that, I figured this out when I was like camping in my Jeep in the desert. I was like, this is all I need. I just need, right? Like, I go live in my Jeep. Um, and then it took off a lot of the pressure that I had, because what, up until that point, what I realized was the more that I would level up and the more assets that we would retain, the more I had to lose, or I felt like I had to lose. And then that put more pressure. And then, like, as you keep going up in income, as you keep going up in revenue, I was like, well, we need to keep growing, because if we're not, like, oh, if we have a bad month, oh, it's the end of the world. And sometimes I do feel like it's in the world. I'll be like, fuck, man, well, maybe this is the top of the mountain, right? Because we can't see the top. It's like, is this the false summit? And I'm constantly like, last week we went to this one mountain, and I was climbing up, and I was huffing and puffing. Like, it was pretty high. And I went to my buddies. I was like, man, we're almost there? He's like, no, we're halfway. Like, that's a false summit. I'm like, son of a bitch. And like, we can't see it. So if we can't see it, we don't know what's the top. And we are afraid if we go down a little bit, we'll just keep tumbling down. And it's something we can't stop. But, I always just keep reminding myself, going, I can go live in a tent. I'd be fine. My wife would not be happy about that.
I think there's a lot of fallacy in measuring yourself against others too. I think so often the perception of the top is what you see from someone else, and that's what you're using to measure your success, or what the top should be for you. And in reality, that has nothing to do with you. And the stressors and all of the things that come with that level sometimes are things that you don't want. And you have, and I think you, again, it just comes with maturity, where you get to a certain point in your life where you realize that, what are the things that are truly important to you without taking those other things into consideration and what you see from others.
No, 100%. Yeah, it's hard though. It's mimetic desire. It's really hard not to care about what other people are doing.
Yeah, or comparing yourself. I mean, I used to do that all the time. I'd be like, or like, I remember, driving out to, the experience. I remember I was talking about a certain individual that I couldn't stand that's really famous in the business space. And he's like, man, that guy's got a lot of mind, like real estate in your mind. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you kind of went into like 3 minutes of why you didn't like this person. And they were like, are you jealous? And I'm like, I had to think for a second. I was like, before I threw him out of the car. No, I was like, I was like, and then I was like, well, maybe part of it, right? Honestly, like that person has attention of all these people, and he probably is a billionaire. And he's like, you want his 2 planes, don't you? I was like, no, I don't. But like, I didn't like how he got there, or his kind of character. Like it just didn't mesh. And I was like, well, that shouldn't work for people. And then I started thinking, and honestly, as I'm thinking now too, I'm like, he's attracting those types of people. Those are not the people that I want. So, that's that, tribe, or, for them. And, this is my tribe, of the people that, we want to surround ourselves with. So, it's like, you got to that's kind of how I think about it a little bit, of going, honestly, are you jealous of it? I'm like, a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, people should push you, but they should push you to be better for yourself, not, hey, you should have what I have.
So let's kind of wrap this up of how this can help some of the agency owners listening, to figure out, what's one thing I need to focus on, in order to really kind of take us to the next level. So Darby, you go first. I'll let
great.
Ian
Thanks.
think about it. Or okay.
What am I doing? What am I supposed to do?
Next steps. I mean, I think everyone needs to make a focused effort on their relationships and finding groups of people, Ben Franklin, I love his biography. And he taught, like, this is one of the biggest things he always did, was created groups of people and manage them. And you should be a part of masterminds, and you should run a mastermind. And, there's a great episode with Jay Fissette on the Garlic Marketing Show, shameless plug.
Plug.
But he talks about this.
Alex beeped that out. No, I'm just kidding.
And also you should get testimonialbook.com and get the book. But the point being is that you need to figure out like the groups you want to be in, and you're not going to get it right all the time. But it's an investment, and sometimes you're going to lose a little money in the investment. And that's what investments are. You lose money on investments and gain it. But even if you lose money in trying to be in the wrong group, you learn something, and it's an education. Is it an expensive one? Yes, but time is the most expensive thing. So if you wait for the perfect one 5 years from now, how much opportunity have you missed because you haven't taken action now, and then go, oh, that was the wrong one, right? But don't think, if you get in it and you're like, I really don't like any of these people. But if you don't experience the people, right? You're like, oh, I met them once and I didn't do that. If you didn't make an effort to reach out to them, provide value first and really listen to them. And you're like, well, you know what? I don't like the way these people are acting. That's fine, and leave. But get into different groups, make an effort. And if you're like, oh, I don't want to be around any, because I go through those solo times myself, push yourself out of it, because it's the best thing you can do for your business.
Yep. Darby?
I think based on the conversation, it's just really considering, why do you want the things you want, and what is the impact that's going to make on your life, for the positive and the negative. For so many people we talk to and talk about, that you have these dreams of, money and this and that and the other. But, in reality, I've come to the realization recently that, success for me is going fishing on a Tuesday. And I can do that regularly. And that is something that's amazing for me. And not a lot of people have that opportunity. So, it sounds silly, but it's something that's meaningful to me. And, just being able to really identify, what success looks like to you and why, and then framing the steps you need to take accordingly.
Very nice. I like it. Well, one of the kind of the call to action for today is we're coming up on a decade for the podcast. So I want to give everyone a shout out for paying attention to us for the past decade. And we'd like to, if you want to come on the show and talk about what's one thing that was impactful to you that helped you in your business, we'd love to give you a shout out, have you on as a guest, especially if you've been listening for all these years. Make sure you go to jasonswank.com/podcast guest and fill out an application. Tell us what you learned. And we'd love to have you on the podcast. So until next time, have a swank day.